Ladies and gentlemen, people of the internet, welcome back to yet another episode of Crypto Over Coffee. I hope you're doing well on this fine Friday, weekend or weekday, whenever it is that you're watching. And if you're new here, every single Friday I break down the latest news and the hottest topics in the world of technology and cryptocurrency over a cup of delicious coffee. In today's episode, we have a well-rounded collection of Chainlink, Digibyte, Cardano, weekly Bitcoin analysis, and of course, our usual 404 Logic Not Found segment that we all know and love. But before we get into all that, let's kick it off with questions from the community on YouTube and Twitter. So I will pull those up here on the computer. And if you want one of your questions answered, make sure you leave them in the comments down below or tweet me at Hashoshi4. And if you would be so inclined, please do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button so you get the heads up whenever I post new content here on the channel. All right. Now the first question here is from Sohail Musavi. It says, how probable is it for Cardano to attract a considerable chunk of developers to create on their platform and create stable growth? Now, this is going to be a slog. It's not going to be an easy thing. But what I think that they will be able to do is be able to bring on a lot of the developers that have been working on protocol over to building at least a seed level of dApps. And I know that it's not as good as community developers, but that's a start. The second thing is they have a really solid shop in the Emergo folks that build the Yoroi wallet, etc., that will be able to help start building applications that are focused maybe on enterprise, and then also getting developer evangelists out there to start teaching people how to build things. So I think if Goguen releases at the end of the year, it'll probably be well into 2021 when we see dApps starting to come out for Cardano, but it's definitely going to be something that we need to watch going into 2021 to see how much infrastructure and tooling there is to work with. Now, the next question is from Anthony Avalos. Were you really drinking coffee? Just asking since you had to redo the content and it's late. Yeah, so last week I recorded the Crypto Over Coffee episode and somehow the footage got lost. It got corrupted or something, but it was gone. I had to redo it. And so I had to re-record it at like 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern time. I was really drinking coffee, but I ended up staying up late anyways to work more. So it worked out just fine. But yes, whenever I do these episodes, I'm drinking coffee for real. All right, next question. Big Herbs. Why do you think NFTs are going to be a major arbiter of adoption? That's quoting me. I'm just learning about the whole crypto world, so I'd love to know your opinion, and NFTs are super interesting. So the reason why I think NFTs are going to be such a significant piece of the puzzle for adoption is that NFTs are very much focused on what humans love, right? We love to collect things. We like to own something that is unique or special. We like to use things that have more utility than just, transacting with each other. Humans in and of themselves love to barter and they love to collect. And so in reality, I think NFTs give you such of a larger customization opportunity for your tokens, in the sense that with ERC 1155 tokens that are built in the engine spec, for example, those can be used with external data to create these really cool customizable objects. You can work with designers to make your NFTs that are on the blockchain really just as data come to life in a user interface or user experience or even a game. And so I think NFTs in tandem with gaming, in tandem with sporting events, tickets, and collectibles, because you see football club or soccer club, Barcelona has had a lot of success now launching fan tokens. These things are going to bring crypto into the mainstream. It's not going to be making the next PayPal with crypto. That's going to start us. It's going to be these things that are very user-friendly and that are wrapped in a nice mobile app that people are used to. So I think NFTs are just naturally the first step to helping push us towards adoption for average, normal, everyday users. Thanks for your question. Sean Coyne asks, 404 Find My iPhone. How come when using a VPN, Find My iPhone still has my location with 4G turned off as well? Thanks. All phones now actually are equipped with location services that in some ways you can't turn off. They all have GPS that's separate from the radio, that is separate from your IP address. And so your phone uses that GPS for a lot of localization services for your apps. So for example, I use YouTube TV because I hate cable. And ultimately what that means is that when I travel, my phone, even though I'm on a VPN or even though I'm somewhere else and I'm on Wi-Fi and then I have my VPN running, it still knows that I'm not in the place that is my home, right? It still knows that I'm outside of the service area for YouTube TV, which is a major bummer, but mobile devices are just built that way. A lot of computers now are also built that way. So we're coming to the point where VPNs don't always unblock content, and so just bear that in mind. iPhones especially are built so that Find My iPhone's always on. Location services are basically always on unless you explicitly turn all those things off. And I don't know exactly how much of it you can turn off fully, but that's the best I've got on that one. Thanks, Sean. All right. Brandon Kobos asks, any thoughts on Engine token? Seems like a great project for gaming in the future. Yes, it was actually featured in my top 10 altcoin picks. I will link that video down below if you're interested in it. But Engine's a project that I'm very passionate about, and I mentioned their ERC 1155 token standard before, which is sort of like taking the best of both worlds in terms of ERC 20, which are fungible tokens, and then NFTs, the ERC 721s, which are non-fungible tokens, and make them efficient, make them useful, and allow you to have off-chain data that feeds into those NFTs is amazing. So yes, Engine is super powerful. If nothing else, they've made one of the single greatest contributions to the Ethereum ecosystem since CryptoKitties came into the fray. They've created a whole new world of different use cases that can be built using that ERC 1155 token standard. So I think if nothing else, Engine has done that, but they also have a really solid gaming engine in the works. They also have, pun intended, they also have a lot of tooling in the works to help game developers use Engine's products. And they've just done a great job overall. I'm definitely a fan of the project, and I really appreciate the question. Now we have a question from Abdumail. Thanks for your efforts. This is a long one, so I'm just going to read the highlights. I said in the last video, hardly people are using Bitcoin as a currency. So he's saying, why should people invest in Bitcoin or any other crypto if people aren't using it as payments? The demand, he says, is mostly out of greed, potentially, and there's not real intrinsic demand for crypto. So in some ways, this is true because in a lot of ways, cryptocurrency is this sort of sourced greed. People just want to make money. And I totally understand that. There's nothing really wrong with that. But I think it starts to cross the wires in terms of the incentives of being in the space and the reason why this technology is so powerful and why it has value. You don't measure something based on whether or not the company is going to have a lot of hype and that you're going to make a lot of money on the token. In my opinion, if you invest in the token, it's because you're investing in the ecosystem, not the company. So it's moving your mind away from this centralized way of thinking, which is how people tend to be, and again, this is why I say decentralization takes a lot more than building a platform. You have to change the way people do things and the way people think. So I think ultimately crypto does have value because the only use case is not just payments. Quite frankly, I think we've found that payments is only a really small subset of the real use cases that there are. We've gone from payments to now gaming tokens. We've gone to NFTs. We've gone to tokenized securities. We've gone to DeFi, complete 360 turns from current financial services over to DeFi. So I think cryptocurrencies do have value beyond just payments, but the reality is the world is not ready for crypto-based payments. And while people do like to spend Bitcoin, a lot of investors don't want to because they're told so often that next week, next month, the next year, it's going to go to 100K. So no one wants to spend it. As a community, we need to normalize spending crypto and using crypto and buying things with it and helping merchants start to have the feeling that they need to accept crypto as a payment method. Because I think ultimately we do too much of the hold, hope for massive price gains when in reality that is not going to move the needle in terms of adoption. So that's a great question. Super, super appreciated. All right, this is the last question for the day, and it's from Kathy Herzl. She said, my son just bought some sort of crypto called Compound. Is it worth anything? He put in $250. Thanks, Kathy. So I can't tell you whether or not it's going to be really good or really bad, depending on the timing. Compound was doing really, really, really well. It was going up like crazy, and then it crashed back down. The reality is that usually when you see a cryptocurrency shooting up super, super high, you don't want to buy then. You want to buy when the market reacts or when you start to see things start to get stable, because usually these upward moves result in a big downward move to follow, and that is what happened here. So hopefully that $250 is not looking like it's cut in half right now, but it very well might be. I do think Compound is a project that has a really quality product to work with, but the reality is that investing in crypto can be a landmine, and I urge everyone to be extremely careful, especially when you're talking about the latest hype coins, because those can get you into deep, deep trouble. So with that, I think that covers us on the questions. Again, if you have any questions for me, please do leave them down in the comments below. And let's get into the news. Now, one big piece of news that I did want to touch on real quick is that today marks the 20th episode of Crypto Over Coffee, and I cannot express to you how thankful I am for every minute that you all have spent watching my content. In particular, this weekly series has been so rewarding to get to interact with you more often, to answer questions, and to just generally have fun talking about what I'm so passionate about. And so the fact that this has been going on for 20 weeks now, 20 episodes, it's so crazy, and I'm so excited for the next 20 episodes. So I welcome you to let me know in the comments below if there's any ways that I can improve this series for you to make it more valuable, to make it more engaging, to make it more fun. And that being said, I also do have to announce the winner of the giveaway for the Bitcoin print from last week. So a big congratulations goes to the randomly selected winner, SullyTube7. You are the winner of the Bitcoin halving print from Jimmy, and I will reach out to you to get your information to ship it out. Thanks so much for all of your comments in the last video, guys. I have so much fun reading them. And so let's dive into the first real news story of the day, because everyone loves to hear my thoughts on Bitcoin and what's happening with prices, and really just the Bitcoin space at large. So as always, here it is. First and foremost, we saw an insane price free fall midweek. We were at like around 10K, all the way down below 9K, pretty much in a matter of half a day. Now, last week we talked about the consolidation of mining efforts and hash rate that resulted in a significant proof of work difficulty increase, and I mentioned that this would inevitably force miners to sell Bitcoin in order to make a profit. Now, in my mind, another rejection at that 10K price mark that we just can't seem to beat, paired with that selling pressure from miners, probably resulted in this big drop. And I don't think that this changes anything in terms of what we can expect for Bitcoin moving forward. It was probably an expected move, but we might see another significant drop before we start to change over to a longer-term bullish move. Now, the key is going to be making Bitcoin more accessible and usable for normal people. And that being said, Kraken, depending on where you're watching this right now, the popular crypto exchange, they're currently holding or have already held a webinar about facilitating payments and accepting payments for businesses using Bitcoin. And that was led by Bitcoin strategist Pierre Rochard. Now, this comes in tandem with one of the best primer documents that I've ever seen made for Bitcoin, which is available on Kraken's website, and I'll link that below. Now, this type of thing is exactly what we need in the space. No nonsense about moons and Lambos. We want to normalize Bitcoin as much as humanly possible, put it into terms that enterprises and businesses can understand, and show them what the value prop is for accepting Bitcoin. In terms of your daily dose of Bitcoin positivity, the crypto research firm Messari recently published a report outlining their estimation that if only a tiny percentage of institutional funds were allocated to Bitcoin, it would bring the overall market cap for Bitcoin above the $1 trillion mark. The report went on to say that if all this were to occur, it would potentially drive Bitcoin's price above $50,000 per coin. Now, whether or not this is likely, it's interesting to note how small of an investment might be required in the grand scheme of things. I think they said around 1%. And beyond that, it illustrates how early we are in this whole thing. Bitcoin is still not a household name. It's still doubted often. And when and if institutional investors start to play the game, it could be really, really significant. And by the way, I did want to ask you guys, would you have interest in occasional programming tutorial segments thrown into these episodes, like super basic beginner stuff to help you get up to speed? If that's something that you're into, let me know in the comments below. Now, this next story is pretty awesome because it may finally open up the oft-abandoned New York folks to more cryptocurrency services from which they have been banned for quite some time. In 2015, New York passed a regulatory certification process called the BIT license, which was an arduous and expensive process required to operate a cryptocurrency exchange service, really of any kind within the state. In a move to make it easier for burgeoning startups to become regulated and operate in New York City more easily, additional clarity is being added to the policy for attaining a conditional BIT license. And this will allow startups to work together with current BIT license holders to produce documentation and agreements necessary to get conditional BIT licenses to operate unperturbed for a given period of time. Now, this is all happening under the understanding that that startup with a conditional license will pursue a full bit license and mentor another team later on. The idea here is to clear up some of the hurdles and the rework and the expense required to get this licensing to operate in New York, and to also add some clarity to the quite frankly shambolic legislation that governs this whole process. Now, I hope that there's continued effort to make this process more clear, less costly, and to give startups a clear path to honestly operating in New York City and New York in general. And this is a good first step, but they can definitely do more. Now, staying in the realm of regulation, there is at present a dire threat to basic rights happening here in the United States, and likely abroad as well, to be honest with you, as it relates to encryption and its usage in everyday technology that we all use. A bill was recently introduced into Congress called the Lawful Access to Encrypted Data Act, sponsored by 3 conservative-leaning senators, which in essence outlines a means by which encryption mechanisms used in tech today would be required to have a backdoor, and that the providers of these services and devices would be required by law to assist law enforcement in extracting data when a warrant is issued for it. Now, this necessarily is not the issue, having companies help out, but the idea being that no encryption could be warrant-proof is concerning. Of course, this is being pushed under the guise of national security and preventing child-related crimes, and no doubt I support means and methods to prevent threats to national security and prevention of crime, especially in terms of child welfare. However, this bill is not a solution. It's a lazy effort with massive unintended consequences. Now, the consequences of this type of move would undermine nearly every major system used today, including many of those that secure the government's communications, if it is left untouched. If encryption can be broken by the companies who create and service these products, the same backdoor mechanisms used and intended for law enforcement can and will be used by cybercriminals and hackers alike to steal data and wreak havoc. It'll put the United States back in the stone ages of technology, and we're already behind in terms of cybersecurity anyway. Now, I'm asking you, if you're in the United States, please call your representative's office and express your concern with this bill and this legislation. It does make a difference by hearing you speak. And this is not about being right-wing or left-wing or any of that. It's about basic common sense. Even the big tech companies have expressed their apprehension and opposition to these types of laws. Apple has resisted the idea that they should decrypt devices. Facebook has resisted efforts to backdoor messenger services. And there are many examples of this. The truth of it is there are many ways to reconcile privacy and encryption with the necessary due diligence and law enforcement operations that we need to have to protect society. The solution is not to neuter every single piece of technology that we have in this country. Facebook has even implied that it has a model for aiding law enforcement efforts without breaking encryption altogether or adding backdoors. Now, I don't like Facebook, but I hope they can push to develop this further, because that is a solution, not a lazy workaround. So hopefully we can come to a solution that makes sense for everyone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for 404 Logic Not Found. And for those of you who are as of yet uninitiated, this is basically a segment where I highlight notable tech-related fails or otherwise stupid moves in the world that need to get some attention. And speaking of attention, if you want to help this video get some attention from the YouTube algorithm, please do hit that like button down there on my behalf. It does help get the video out there. Thank you in advance for that. And after that last story, I'm sorry to have to present yet another concerning abuse of technology, but alas, I must. Now, this story dates back to 2018 in its origin, but it's increasingly relevant today. Now, in 2018, Robert Williams, a man in Michigan, was arrested in front of his family and charged with felony retail fraud as a result of, in large part, an erroneous match from facial recognition software. Now, Williams was pinged as a match for the perpetrator, who was captured on store's video camera after several watches were stolen. But only after keeping him in custody, interrogating him, charging, and arraigning him did authorities realize that they had relied on facial recognition software that simply got the wrong guy. Now, it's no secret that facial recognition software is highly effective on certain demographics when provided high-quality front-facing images of a person. However, when introducing grainy footage from far away or high up, the results are below average at best. Not to mention the fact that facial recognition software is notoriously less likely to work properly on individuals of color. Which begs the question, why is it used as a tool by law enforcement to find and identify suspects when it is so clearly flawed in its execution? It should be a tool, certainly, but it shouldn't be used to charge people. And the reality is that this becomes a moral dilemma, and it will continue to become more of one as this technology is used more and more often by policing organizations. And while the usage of the technology to arrest Williams eventually did not result in his incarceration, it very well could have. And not only that, his name, his case, and all the information related to this is still in the system. And he's now fighting with the police to really honestly abandon the use of the technology, or at best establish policies to prevent its misuse. Now at present, the use of facial recognition has likely resulted in many false arrests, false charges, and even incarcerations. And it's also likely been used as a crutch for law enforcement when they don't have a suspect at all. And honestly, even without high confidence levels in the results, it's concerning to see that Williams was ID'd as a suspect. If it doesn't work, why are you using it? 404, logic not found. Now, for those Digibyte fans out there, it seems like the recognition that you deserve is finally coming from major players in the space, as Binance recently listed the superfast UTXO blockchain on its platform. This should surely offer a new level of access to the coin, and it should be seen as a bullish sign, but I will say I recommend buying it on the non-custodial service Shapeshift instead, because you can do so without ever leaving your crypto sitting on an exchange, and you can instead have it sent straight to your hardware wallet of choice. Of course, there are still rumblings that Coinbase could soon list Digibyte as well, which would yet again bring more and more visibility to the coin. And that said, if you're not familiar with Digibyte, I do have a bunch of stuff on it on the channel, and I recommend you do some more research and check it out because it's well worth the look. It offers huge potential for fast payments, digital identity, and even asset issuance. Now, I do have some content on this, of course, and you can check out the basics, which I will link up in the description box down below. For the Chainlink fans watching, I do have an update for you as well, and that is the announcement that Chainlink is to be integrated into China's Blockchain Services Network, or BSN, and that seemed to feed into the already ravenous demand for Link tokens these days. But underneath the hood, and outside of price actually, there's more to this than meets the eye. The BSN in China is a national technology services hub that allows enterprises and organizations to start utilizing blockchain technology and access a multitude of public networks. Now, in many ways, BSN is a network that connects these many blockchains together in one hub for Chinese entities to use. Now, what is ubiquitous amongst these networks, though, is the need for external data to be propagated to the on-chain smart contracts, which Chainlink handily provides in a native network structure. Now, organically, this fits the BSN's needs at the moment. And I think this just further supports the notion that Chainlink is filling a very underserved niche in this market, and not just in the US, and not just for Ethereum, but for other platforms as well, completely agnostic of where they are. So this is definitely good news. Now, of course, this episode would not be complete without the obligatory Cardano update, given the exciting sprint towards Shelley's mainnet release. And I will yet again say that I'm very confident that Shelley, including proof of stake, network incentives, and the like, will be in mainnet by the turn of August. And shortly prior to filming this video, actually, Charles Hoskinson replied to one of my tweets simply stating, "There is no delay, the hard fork happens on July 29th. Now, this was following my response to a community member who was wondering if things were delayed due to wording in a blog post that was a little confusing. Now, this should give Cardano fans some peace of mind that things are still going according to plan, and by mid-August, you should be able to get some sweet staking rewards after that waiting period is up. Now, I will do a video about how to get started staking as soon as things go live, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That being said, the community has been buzzing lately about Coinbase reportedly readying a listing of ADA. I don't know how true this is, but it really wouldn't surprise me, because Coinbase loves the opportunity to make easy money staking assets on the behalf of users like they do with Tezos, for example. Now, my advice to you is this. As exciting as this is, please don't let Coinbase stake for you, and do so yourself using the native wallet options for Cardano, or even using your own cold storage wallet. It's easy, you don't have to share your spoils, and you don't have to give up your crypto. Now, there are some folks saying that there will be some sort of way to exclude exchanges from participating in staking and governance, but to me that seems like a really hard way to go about it and impossible to enforce without some sort of massive centralized entity deciding who can and can't do things. So we shall see. I may be totally wrong there, but at any rate, relish the fact that Shelley is right around the corner and your patience and loyalty is finally being rewarded. Cardano is a project that I'm very passionate about, and I'm excited to see what happens for the rest of the year. Now, if you want to keep the party going, I will link up a playlist here that describes my top 3 favorite VPN services that will help you stay secure online during this crazy time. So thank you in advance for that, and I want to wish you and your family a wonderful weekend and week to follow. And until next time, cheers.